The following lesson is all about the clone stamp tool and the healing brush tool. Let's also move over to the left hand side. Over here you guys can see the clone stamp tool and the healing brush tool. Both are really amazing. Das will ich jetzt gerne in echt sagen. Both are really amazing tools and should always be in your toolbar. Both tools have the same properties but work differently. Both copy pixels from a certain area and paste them again in a new area. But like I said, they have different properties. The clone stamp tool copies pixels which include all tonalities and textures, meaning color ranges, shadows, and highlights. This tool does more of a copy-paste work. Whereas with the healing brush tool, it only copies textures and bleeds them into a new area. This way it looks more smooth and real and not so much like a copy-paste effect. Let me actually explain and show you guys this as well. So first of all, if I'll select now the clone stamp tool and right away zoom in a little bit closer. Again, remember with the clone stamp tool, you can also use again Control and Alt together on the keyboard in order to move left and right, change the diameter, and again the hardness. This goes for every brush tool that you have, or clone or healing brush tool. Okay, I'm going to make now my hardness something around 80%. As well on the top, we'll cover that in a moment. I just want to show you guys first of all the effect here. Let's zoom a little bit over. Okay, press Z on the keyboard, I'll zoom in. And want to remove now, say for instance, this little pimple over here. So if I'm going to work with the clone stamp tool, basically holding Alt now to sample and source an area from here. So this is our source area, the yellow. We hold Alt and click once. That means it's now copying just the yellow. As you guys can see, so it copies everything, the whole tonalities. Again, if I'm going to go over here to the pimple and just brush over here, it will right away copy paste this whole area. Instead of using here the healing brush tool, this will work a little bit different. Again, I'm also going to make my brush a bit bigger and change the hardness to 80%. So it's pretty much the same. Now I'm going to hold Alt over here, select the area, and just brush over here. And have a look, it's not copying everything, it's blending in smoothly, again, an area from here. Over here, it's out of focus and smooth, the texture, so it's only copying this texture over here. Different again, if we source with the clone stamp tool, you see this copies everything. So this also applies now when you say, for instance, want to remove these pimples over here. Then I would rather suggest working again with the healing brush tool. So select the healing brush tool, make your brush a bit smaller. You can also feather it completely to 0 hardness. That's what I mostly do. Hold Alt to sample, and I always try to source very close by. So say for instance, this is the area that I want to fix, then I will source from here. So click once via holding Alt, and I'll literally move over here and just carefully brush that over. And again, once more, and carefully brush that over. And right away, it looks better. Let's also show you guys another effect here. I actually want to go 1 or 2 steps back. Okay, this select, we'll zoom out first of all. And I want to show you guys also one more very important thing. If we're going to move over back to our toolbar here on the right and left side, again, and select the clone stamp tool, obviously our application bar changes, so you guys are not new to this anymore now. First of all, again, we have the shape size, what we also do with Control Alt on the keyboard. We have a whole preset menu just for the certain brush. More about this in the brush tool. This applies also obviously to this. Then the clone source, again, I've never played with this before. I normally stick to the normal standard Photoshop settings. They always worked for me. Then as well, some blending options here in the top. I've never worked with the blending options here. It's to change the blending option of the tool directly. For me, a bit difficult and confusing. I normally stick with the layers and just work over here. Then as well, the opacity, the flow. Again, you have a few jitters over here with airbrush. This is one over here, airbrush, aligned. I've never really worked with these tools ever. I just work with the standard system and that works for me. But one thing that's very important here is the sample. Current layer, current below, or all layers. Let me explain this a bit better. I'm going to double click on here, just unlock our background layer. Press Command J on the keyboard in order to duplicate. You can also obviously drag down the layer. We've learned this already. And now I'm just going to rename all to 1, 2, and 3. So say for instance, I'm going to work now on layer 3. And I have current layer selected. The same goes also for the healing brush tool. Please have a look. Healing brush tool, if we select this, the application bar changes, but we still have the sample area the same. Let's move back to clone stamp. And again, you can see here current layer. So the same system goes for healing brush tool. If I work on the current layer now, and I work here and copy something and try to clone stamp something away, it's currently just working on layer 3. But if I now switch over to current and below, it will now copy areas from layer 3 and layer 2 and affect that onto your top layer. So just be sure about that. You are now sampling and copying from layer 3 and layer 2. And if you have all layers selected, obviously it will then copy from all 3 layers. So sometimes this is switched on and one works with this tool and it's just so confusing because you copy and paste areas and you're healing and brushing, but it doesn't look right and it's not what you wanted. It's maybe because you have selected the wrong option here. So I normally stick to current layer. So remember again, current layer will now be the layer that you currently selected. And if you have all layers, it will be all the layers. All right, just that off the bat. Let's delete this again and get once back again to the clone stamp tool and show you a bit of an example what we can do with this. Say for instance, if we zoom in and say for instance over here, we have a bit of a reflection in the glasses and we want to remove this little spot over here. Let me create a quick new layer here and just put a ring around this so you guys know exactly what I'm talking about, this area over here. So I want to remove this area, right? Then I will select my layer that I want to work on. So that's layer number 1. I'll press S on the keyboard in order to get to the clone stamp tool. I make my brush a bit smaller, again with Control Alt. I'm also working with the Vacuum Continuous 5 Pro tablet. So for me, it's easy to change because I have a wheel here and change things quicker. There's also a bit about this later in the course. But for now, you can hold Control Alt. Again, make this a bit smaller. I'm going to change the hardness to 0. And now hold Alt in order to source again and sample an area. So basically close by, I'm sourcing. So sourcing from this area and now brushing over. But remember, you are copy pasting. So this area over here is a bit lighter than over here. So you can already see the difference. If I copy again and brush over here, it's copying the textures, the tonalities and everything. So it doesn't look good at all. So the copy pasting does not work so nicely over here. Let's go to the history and just change. For that, I would rather use again the healing brush tool. So select the healing brush tool, make it a bit smaller, and again hold Alt on the keyboard, sample an area close by, and now have a look, we're only sampling the texture. And now it looks perfect. The same goes for over here. We'll say something in the eye. You can now slowly start cleaning up all the little dust spots. Again, see how often I press Alt. So I'm always sourcing very close by. Again, click and source. Click, source, and paste. Kind of a thing. Click by, close by, and I just brush. Click by, close, and brush. So again, the healing brush tool is way better. But sometimes you have areas like this one over here. So if I'm going to go back to the healing brush tool, select Alt, and just brush over here, see it smudges a little bit, and it breaks the whole pixels. And that's also what I don't want. So then I would rather work again just with the clone stamp tool. Select the clone stamp tool, zoom in really closely, and again sample an area close by. I'm also trying to make my brush a bit smaller. Source the area very close by because you're obviously now copying tonalities, textures, and everything. Sample and slowly brush over here. Okay, sample again from the other side and slowly brush back. And if we zoom out now, we see there's no smudges and it looks good as well. So the clone stamp tool has a few different properties than the healing brush tool. Both take a bit of time to work with, and once you got the hang of it, it's an amazing tool to have. I actually want to delete this empty layer right away and show you guys another technique when you can actually go and work with on all layers. So what I'll do now is just create a new empty layer. I'll rename this quickly to healing. There we go. And right away, we have a healing layer. So what I'll do now is go back over here, select the healing brush tool, zoom in a bit closer, and now I will also select under the healing brush tool, the layers to all layer, right? So it's now sampling all layers, but I can work on this empty layer. Now I hold Alt, source an area close by, and slowly just brush over here. Again, hold Alt and brush an area nearby. Do this a bit more, and over here. And again, I will continue on this side, brush over here, brush again a bit more. Okay, I'm going to move up, maybe remove this. And this I would do now for a few hours, obviously fixing the face. But this is not so more about skin retouching. It's more about learning the tool, right? So again, cleaning all of this. Maybe we have an area like here. We'll clean that. Again, have a look how I always source very close by. Okay, like so. And then I'll zoom out again. I quickly want to show you guys just the before and after now. So on this healing brush, we've only worked on this. So if you mess up, you can always delete this layer or erase out of this layer or delete it and start again. So have a look. Here's the before and after, before and after. So we slowly fix the face just with the healing brush tool. You can also do this method, press Command J, duplicate the layer and work then again, obviously directly on this layer. So it's going to be layer 2. I'll switch this again with the clone stamp tool and the healing brush tool, obviously to current layer, and then work pretty much the same effect. Okay, hold Alt, source close by, and just brush over this. So now you're obviously brushing right away on the second layer and your whole Photoshop file gets bigger again. So the first technique was a bit better. Okay, but it's basically exactly the same effect. So again, like I said a few times in this course, there are many different ways in Photoshop with workflow techniques. Some people work like this. Some people work like I showed before, just with an extra layer. Okay, let's zoom out again. And again, we have the same before and after result, but on a separate layer. That's totally up to you and how you would wish to work with your workflow. All right, let's head over now to the next lesson.